The merciless wild. The heartless seas. When nature unleashes her cruelty, could you escape? Could you survive? These are the true stories of outdoorsmen confronted by death, armed with raw courage and a will to live. They are the ones who beat the odds and return from their own fight to survive. For a young hunter, the freedom of the Georgia woods casts a special spell.
I actually like being out on my own and being able to experience things on my own.
Here he can stretch his legs and hone his skills, building confidence in his woodsmanship.
I never really worried about anything attacking me. I never really had much to worry about.
But all that changes when he suddenly becomes the prey to a deadly pack of predators. The fall woods of Georgia have been home to Jackson Jordan since the age of 6, when he first went there with his father to hunt. By the time he was 11, he had taken his first deer and learned to be skilled with both rifle and bow.
I'm a big archery hunter. I love to archery hunt, and I tend to stay in the archery season on into rifle season. I like to hunt there, and I do predator hunt also.
Jackson hunts predators as a form of wildlife management.
We do predator hunting just to keep the population down, because they do take the population of the deer and drop them drastically. The type of predators that we hunt in the state of Georgia are mostly hogs and coyotes also. We had seen a lot of coyotes in the area. You know, we'd seen, 10, 11, 12 running together at a time. And you hear them calling in the woods and trying to locate each other and get up and get in a pack with each other.
Although coyotes feed mostly on small animals, including lizards and insects, they are more than capable of attacking and killing deer, livestock, and even household pets.
Looking missed.
A coyote is a carnivore, obviously. They call it the American jackal. It stretches all the way from Alaska, far north Canada, all the way down into Mexico. You can hunt them as much as you want, but they are one of the smartest critters there is, and you will never get rid of them. And they're shy. They don't want anything to do with humans, most of the time.
When hunting large prey, they will usually be in packs and will attack the rear or flanks of the animal, trying to pull it to the ground. When they start after an animal, coyotes can continue pursuing it for hours until they make the kill or abandon the attack. From the time Jackson was 13, his father gave him an increasingly freer rein to roam and to hunt on his own. And for Jackson, it was the perfect situation, as he could not imagine any real threat waiting for him in the Georgia woods he loved.
When I was probably 13, my dad started letting me hunt on my own, and that was just from him going out with me and letting me take a deer with him by my side. And he kind of just turned over everything to me when the deer did come out. He didn't really tell me what to do. He just kind of let me go ahead and experience that myself while he was there with me.
Nice, you got it. That's awesome. Let's go check it out.
Okay.
Once he did that, he knew that I was able to hunt by myself.
For Jackson, being able to hunt alone was something he often looked forward to at the end of the school day, and he would be in a rush to get out with his bow or rifle while the light lasted. And for him, it was also a way of proving himself as a young man.
Going hunting after school to me was more of a independent type thing. I actually liked being out on my own and being able to experience things on my own. I would say maybe a rite of passage.
By the time Jackson is 16, his abilities as an outdoorsman instill a confidence in him, a confidence that will soon be tested.
Whenever I started hunting on my own, I never really worried about anything attacking me, especially like not as far as cougars or bears. Anything like that wasn't much of a concern for me. I never really had much to worry about.
On December 21st, 2003, Jackson prepares for an evening's hunt as he always does. He doesn't expect anything but deer to be waiting for him when he gets into the field.
It was later in the year, very cool outside. Got everything ready, got all my gear together, and got in the truck and went back out to the woods. And just didn't plan to be able to sit very long, just because I knew that I wasn't going to have a lot of time. So when I got there, I drove to the stand. I left my truck probably 175 to 200 yards around a short finger of woods on the other side. It was a very pretty evening. It was, like I said, it was pretty cool. I had all my thick cold weather gear on. I hadn't sat there very long. I had heard some noises and thought that I heard somebody, getting in my truck or something along the lines of that. So I sat there for a little while longer, and I wanted to go check it out just because I was a little nervous about it.
Jackson starts back to his truck. The next 200 yards will suddenly turn into the longest walk of his young life. "16-year-old Jackson Jordan is deer hunting alone in the Georgia woods. He's an experienced hunter, and he's confident in his skills. This is familiar territory, and he's comfortable with his surroundings. But then he hears noises and thinks someone is breaking into his truck. He leaves his stand to investigate. Now, his hunt is about to turn into a literal fight for survival.
So I walked back towards my truck, and I'd probably not made it 50, 75 yards from where I had been sitting. And I heard something running behind me. In my mind, I'm thinking, I've jumped a deer up. I shouldn't have got up out of the stand and come back over here.
It is a coyote, determined to take Jackson to the ground.
I turned around and it just caught me off guard, and I actually had that coyote leaping at me.
A vicious coyote has sunk its fangs into Jackson's right arm.
It bit me and knocked me down onto the ground, and I dropped my rifle.
As he struggles with one attacker, he realizes that more are coming up behind it.
There was 3 of them all together. They were snapping, trying to bite me.
In typical fashion, the brush wolves have made a coordinated attack from behind and from the side, slamming Jackson to the ground.
I was just trying to get that coyote off of me. At 16 years old, it's just something that you don't always, you never think about. So I started trying to hit it, punch it, anything I could do to get it off of me. And finally, the one on my right arm let go.
Trying to stand, Jackson is brought down again by another coyote that bites into his left leg. On the ground, though, Jackson's hand falls onto his rifle.
And flip the safety off and just get an offhand shot. And just barely grazed one of them, and the two ran off, and the one that was on my leg just continued to stay there. And I knew that I couldn't try to shoot one off my leg. I could possibly shoot myself. I just started hitting it with the rifle or in my hand, anything I could do to try to get it off of me. Finally, it let go. I got back up. I stood there for a second. They were in the woods there. I could hear them running around, and I just stood there and tried to stand my ground and protect myself for a few minutes because I didn't know if they were going to come back or, what they might do.
With coyotes who have tasted blood, waiting and watching in the woods, Jackson Jordan has to regain his composure, assess his injuries, and try to reach safety.
Nice, you got it.
The Georgia woods have been a second home to 16-year-old Jackson Jordan since he started hunting them with his father when he was 6. But all that has changed in mere minutes, as he has just experienced the fierce, predatory assault of a pack of coyotes. He has gotten off a single shot and scared off a pair of the coyotes, and used his rifle butt to club a third off his leg.
These coyotes, there was 3 of them and one of this hunter. They sized him up and they said, we can take him. That's what made them fearless. Once they decide to attack, they're vicious. But as soon as he shot his gun off, they'd probably been shot at, and they remembered, we better get the heck out of here.
Back on his feet, he does not know if the coyotes are preparing to come again, or if this time there will be more than 3. He needs to check his wounds and get to safety without delay.
Well, the first place I looked was on my leg because I knew that it had scratched me on my leg a little bit. Just couldn't feel the pain. Like I said, as far as my adrenaline going, I didn't know if if the injuries were worse than they were. It was bleeding a little bit. It punctured 4 holes in the pants that I was wearing at the time. Then once I saw there, I knew that I was able to use my right arm, so I knew that it wasn't bad enough to where I couldn't try to get back to safety.
In the past, Jackson has seen coyotes in packs of a dozen. And as he hears the sounds coming through the trees around him, he has to wonder if more coyotes are gathering to finish the attack.
I'd seen 10, 11, 12 at a time together, and I knew if there were 3 that I would probably be okay, but if the other 10 or so came, that I was going to be in trouble.
A coyote may stand just 2 feet at the shoulder and weigh only 25 pounds, but the coyote is a 2-million-year-old survivor of the Pleistocene, able to run at over 40 miles per hour. And in packs, it's like a school of piranha. Over the years, 35 coyote attacks have been verified in California alone. Because of their size, coyotes do not kill quickly, but must depend on repeated bites. At least twice, such attacks have proved fatal. One in the early 1980s in Southern California involved a toddler dragged from her yard and into the street, the young child dying later in the hospital from her injuries.
Coyotes will usually avoid humans at any cost. They're almost nocturnal in most places because of the hunting pressure, and you rarely ever see them. You can't hunt the coyotes, and so they're losing their fear of humans because there's no threat.
In October 2009, a 19-year-old Toronto singer-songwriter, Taylor Mitchell, while hiking in a national park in eastern Canada, was set upon by a pack of coyotes and killed.
And in this case, they had interbred with wolves. That poor girl didn't stand a chance.
During the attack on Jackson, the initial rush of adrenaline kept the fear at bay. But now, in the aftermath, and knowing the coyotes are nearby, freezing fear begins to course through his veins.
At the time, I probably was afraid for my life. I don't think that I had much time to think about it, and it was just more of a survival type mode. But it was very frightening. It was very frightening.
Safety, refuge. This is what Jackson must find. He has to make it back to his truck and his cell phone, even if it means turning his back on the coyotes. At 16, Jackson Jordan is hunting deer in his native Georgia woods when he is ambushed and mauled by a pack of vicious coyotes. As Jackson retreats to his truck, it is like he is awakening from a walking nightmare.
When I got back to the truck, I'm thinking, did this really happen? And why? What could I have done, to provoke them? Did they think I was something else, or were they just hungry? Why would they do it?
In the safety of his pickup, Jackson has time for his mind to clear and to reach for his cell phone to send out a call for help.
And I called my dad and telling him, hey, look, I just got attacked by coyotes. And he's like, you're kidding me. He couldn't believe it himself. He's been a firefighter for 28 years, and he immediately went into, making sure I was okay. And, I'm just like, hey, I'm just trying to get home, just to try to, get away from the situation.
As he drives home, he at last has a chance to assess the damage the coyotes have done to him.
By the time I got home, I had already pulled my coat sleeve up to see if I had any bleeding or anything, and the insulation of the jacket, it had a lot of material in between. The coyotes didn't actually puncture my skin as deep as it could have. And on my left leg, it made 4 puncture wounds into the pants that I had on at the time.
The evidence of the ferocity of the attack can be seen in the state of the pants he's wearing. Pants he has kept to this day as a reminder of a potentially deadly situation.
These are the actual pants that I was wearing at the time, and the 4 puncture holes, these are the 2 top teeth, the top canine teeth, and these are the 2 bottom ones here.
Jackson may have been lucky to escape the ultimate fate of the coyotes' jaws, but their teeth may have left him with something equally as lethal, as he learns from family friend Bo Nicholson, an EMT.
He said that without knowing if the animal actually had rabies, that they normally suggested taking the rabies shots as a precautionary step.
The next day, Jackson and his father go to the local hospital, where a doctor delivers the grave diagnosis.
He looked at the bite wounds on my right arm and on my left leg. Some time ago, they would split the shots up along the belly. At the time, the steps had actually changed, so they put several shots around the puncture wounds in my right arm. Probably ended up with, 50, 60 different injection sites around the puncture wounds. Once that was finished, they put 2 large shots into each hip. And I knew that they were very painful shots. I'd always, just heard about the rabies shots being very painful. And I couldn't begin to, explain the type of pain that those shots are when they're injected into your skin. It just makes your skin feel like it's on fire, and if not worse, as they're putting those in.
The pain of the shots is like the stings of scores of angry wasps, but there is no alternative. The threat of rabies is the threat of violent death with unbearable pain, mania, seizures, hydrophobia, and coma. In medical history, there is only a single case of a person surviving rabies without vaccination.
For the next couple of days, it was very, very, very sore.
The series of injections spares Jackson from contracting rabies, and he makes a complete recovery from his wounds. And the attack does not keep him from returning to the woods to follow his passion for hunting.
After the attacks from the coyotes, I did go back and hunt in that area.
Even though Jackson still loves the woods, the sight and sound of coyotes there can cast a chilling shadow over him.
When you do hear them, it does make your skin, kind of crawl and your hair stand up a little bit, even now.
If anything, Jackson Jordan's ordeal instilled in him an even deeper respect for the wild and its sometimes deadly inhabitants.
I'd say the most important lesson I've taken from the incident of being attacked by the coyotes is to not take any wild animal for granted. We're in their environment, and we're taking up their space, and all they're doing is trying to defend it.
The merciless wild. The heartless seas. When nature unleashes her cruelty, could you escape? Could you survive? These are the true stories of outdoorsmen confronted by death, armed with raw courage and a will to live. They are the ones who beat the odds and return from their own fight to survive. A lifelong bond of hunting forged between father and son.
The kinds of hunting we do is, elk, deer, antelope.
Threatened to be pulled apart in the jaws of a Wyoming grizzly.
He came straight at me,
forcing a father to decide his life or his son's.
He was fighting for his life.
Will either of them survive?
The bear was on top of me.
The Ron Lemmings, Senior and Junior. For them, the towering mountains, wild forests, and big game have beckoned each fall. Ron has taken his son hunting and fishing since Ronnie was 2 years old.
When Ronnie killed his first deer, he was 12 years old. I was probably more excited than he was over the kill.
The kinds of hunting we do is, elk, deer, antelope, moose, anything we can draw a tag for.
For father and son, it's the trail of the mountain man and the Native American as they ride their horses far into the rugged wilderness.
We hunt with rifles and we hunt with bows. Usually we hunt with bows every year because you can hunt with a bow, and if you don't kill anything, then you can also go back during rifle season. I like bow hunting best. It's more of a challenge. You got to get in real close. There's just something about it. You're all camoed out. It's really close range. It's definitely more exciting, I think, bow hunting.
In October 2009, the call of bugling elk draws the two men up to ride the High Lonesome, which is in fact home to every brand of wild game, including the deadliest.
When we go up hunting in Boulder Basin, we see everything. We see, deer, elk, bighorn sheep, moose, of course, grizzly bears, black bears.
The hunt has started well. They've had several chances at elk, and it seems just a matter of time. which fills their 4th day with excited anticipation. Before leaving camp, though, they ask for help and protection, as they always do.
Please keep my son safe.
We just more or less pray that we will have a safe hunt and maybe have an opportunity to get close to an elk or whatever, and then we'll take it from there.
I think probably that morning when I said that prayer that I was hoping that I would have a bull elk in front of me and that he would guide that arrow and that I would finally get to put my tag on an elk.
True today.
Neither knows what their prayer may mean before the morning's over. Prayer counts, but so does using elk scent to help them disguise their human odor and get into range for a shot with their bows, though this could have fateful consequences. As the hunt begins, they decide that Ron Sr. will hunt below, while Ron Jr. calls from above and tries to get an elk to walk by his dad.
We eased into our favorite little spot there and started calling, and right off the bat, a bull answered us and started coming in.
We had been set up for probably, I don't know, 5 to 10 minutes, and Ronnie was behind me about 40 yards. I was down the hill from him, and it was, I believe, a 5-point bull came in and stood just below me, and then he turned and went off to my left, and I couldn't see him, but Ronnie kept calling, so I knew he was still there. I was just waiting for him to move back in an area where I could get a shot at him.
I seen that bull coming out, and he was right exactly where I thought he was going to come out, and my dad was in a perfect position. I thought for sure that was his elk. We were getting that elk for sure.
The last piece looks like it's about to fall into place, when, without warning, the elk bolts.
The elk spooked and took off, and everything was, I couldn't figure it out. There was no reason for him to spook, and after he spooked and took off, I stood up. Then I heard a stick break behind me, and I turned around, and that's when I seen the bear.
And what's a mystery at first becomes true terror.
When I turned around, the bear was probably 20 yards from me, just standing there looking at me. The look on his face, I knew this wasn't good.
I heard Ronnie yell, "Get out of here." And instantly I knew it was a grizzly bear because he would never open his mouth if it wasn't a bear.
I just threw my arms up, and I yelled at him to get out of here. Most of the time they turn and run off. This one, his ears went flat and he came straight at me at full speed.
For Ron Sr., it's a nightmare playing out in horrifying slow motion.
The very first thing that I thought of when I saw that bear behind him, just for a split second, I was holding him when he was a little tiny baby. And then my next thought was that bear's gonna maul my son.
Can a man with only a bow and arrow in his hand rescue his son? And does he risk becoming prey himself? Without seeming provocation, a grizzly bear is charging down on archery elk hunter Ron Lemming. And his father can only watch in horror.
I mean, we're talking like a second, and he's, standing a foot away from me. There was no time, to think about what you were gonna do or how you were gonna do it. I just got behind the tree. And he followed me all the way around the tree, and then I just took off straight down the hill as fast as I could. I knew he was chasing me, and I was just trying to stay up. I knew I wasn't gonna be able to keep that up long because it was such a steep hill and I was going so fast. The only clear path down the hill happened to be right by where my dad was at.
They were getting close to me by that time, and I just thought I have to do something, and shoot the bear with the bow was the only thing I could think of that might help. And not even knowing that was going to do anything.
It's all adrenaline and desperation as Ron Sr. comes to full draw, praying his aim will be true.
I drew back. I had to wait just for a split second until I knew I wasn't going to hit Ronnie, and then I shot. I had no idea that I had hit the bear. The way everything was going, it just seemed like, you know, this little arrow didn't do anything.
I saw my dad draw his bow back. I heard his bow go off, and I seen a flash of an arrow just go right by my leg. I didn't know if the arrow hit the bear, and about the same time, I was on the ground. I guess the bear had caught me at that point and knocked me down.
The massive grizzly is now on top of Ronnie and about to clamp him in its powerful jaws and slash him with its raking claws.
When I hit the ground, the first thing I could think of was, well, I didn't want to be on my stomach. I wanted to be on my back where I could see what was going on. And I rolled right straight over to my back. And the bear was, you know, he was right on top of me, trying to look like he was, you know, I know they always go try to get in people's heads and at your face and stuff. And that was the only thing that was going through my mind, was to keep him away from my face and my head. The adrenaline and everything that was going on, I actually didn't even know that he had bit me at this point.
Ronnie's laying on his back, kicking and slugging. I mean, he was fighting for his life.
Somehow, Ronnie gets back to his feet and makes another run to escape the grizzly.
I took off down the hill again, and he's right on me, chasing me down the hill again. And I went to jump in between two trees, and the bear kind of pinned me down up against that tree, and it knocked the wind out of me, and trying to turn around and reach behind me, and that's when he bit through my hand.
The bear is in for the kill. Ron Sr. has to resort to last-ditch measures to try to save his son, putting himself in harm's way.
And I couldn't shoot there because, you know, it would have been a chance of the arrow going through the bear and hitting him. So I just thought the only thing I can do is try and get him off of him, and I started beating on it with my bow.
After a little bit, I felt, you know, he got off me. All of a sudden there was no more weight on me, and I'm thinking, oh, he's gonna leave, you know. And I looked over and I could see my dad standing there, and I seen the bear take a couple steps towards him. And I thought, I don't have nothing left in me, and this thing's gonna go after him now.
Ron Lemming Sr. may have only succeeded in giving the grizzly another target for its rage. Deep in the Wyoming wilderness, Ron Lemming Sr. has been able to halt the attack on his son. But now the infuriated grizzly is ready to turn on him.
And when it turned and looked at me and took a step toward me, I thought, well, now I'm going to get it.
As the bear appears ready to attack Ron Sr., it suddenly begins behaving oddly and turns away.
And then about that time, he turned around and he walked right beside me and just kind of went down, just walked right down the hill and went about 20 yards down there. And he stopped and he turned around again and looked at us.
Wounded and bleeding on the ground, Ronnie Lemming shouts at his father to shoot the bear again before it can come back. But all Ron Sr. can see is the horrifying sight his son presents.
He was covered in blood, I mean, from head to toe. And I just thought, oh my gosh, you know, I mean, my worst fear was there. And of course, after asking him, and he kept saying, I don't know, I'm thinking, well, you've got to know because you're half dead. And I'm just thinking bad things.
Suffering from shock, Ronnie cannot answer his father's questions about where he is injured. Desperate to help his son, Ron cannot forget the bear that still looms just yards away. Until
Then he just took off wandering down the hill and fell over. The bear wasn't moving. We figured he was dead. It was like he took a 5-gallon bucket of blood and dumped on me and then dumped it all over the ground. I just assumed when I seen all that blood it was mine, and but I couldn't feel, I didn't really feel no pain at that point because of the adrenaline and everything that was going on, and I assumed it was my blood, but I wasn't sure.
surprisingly, maybe miraculously, they find that the vast quantities of blood are not Ronnie's, but were pumped out of the bear. Both hunters realize that grizzlies are a threatened species, and so there will be an investigation of this one's death, which they document with their camera. Despite his injuries, Ronnie is able to begin the arduous trek back to camp. Ever the true hunter, he even suggests one last attempt at a trophy.
Just before we had left the scene of the attack, he tells me, he says, "I hope it's not too bad because I want to keep hunting." And I said, "Kid, you're going to the hospital. There's no more hunting this trip."
As the long, painful walk continues, they hope Ronnie's wounds won't threaten just the hunt, but his life too. Wyoming's Boulder Basin outside Yellowstone has been the favorite wilderness hunting grounds for father and son Ron and Ronnie Lemming. But now it's become a territory of terror as they rush to reach medical help. On the ride to the pickup truck, the numbing effect of the shock fades, and Ronnie begins to feel the pain with every clopping step of his horse.
I felt pretty good as we were riding out, and we got a few miles from the trailhead, and then I could kind of, I started feeling some throbbing, and then I started feeling the pain, because it took us probably 6 hours to get back to where our pickup was.
At trail's end of the torturous ride, Ronnie is able to get word to his wife, who can hardly believe what she hears.
I had my cell phone in the pickup. We got down there and I called her and I told her I got attacked by a bear. She was kind of thought I was screwing around or something, she didn't really believe me. And I said, "No, I really did get attacked by a bear." I said, "I'm gonna have to go to the hospital."
And he called and said that he'd been attacked by a bear, and I just thought he was joking. At first, I was just like, "Oh, brother," because in my mind, if you're attacked by a bear, you're dead.
12 hours from the time of his attack by a grizzly bear, Ronnie Lemming and his father pull into Ronnie's driveway.
When I saw him fall to blood, it just kind of hit me like, man, this is real. This is really happening. Then it was just kind of like, okay, get in the car, we need to go to the hospital.
When we got to the hospital and got in there, they looked at it and they said that I was going to have surgery, and because they needed to cut, around all the bite wounds and all that, they needed to cut that open. They were worried about him getting infected.
By the time we got to the hospital and they got him into surgery, it was like midnight. I do remember sitting out in the waiting room by myself. That was kind of just going through my mind and telling our kids if their dad had died. How do you tell like a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old their dad's dead? So I just remember sitting out there and just those thoughts were going through my head, and just being really thankful that that didn't happen.
With Ronnie in the hospital, Ron Sr. escorts a game warden and a biologist back to the scene of the attack the next day. As the biologist examines the grizzly, it becomes clear just how remarkable Ron's shot was.
They checked the bear. He used a limber stick, and he followed the path of the arrow. And he told me that The arrow had hit a major artery and went right into the heart.
An inch right or left, up or down, and Ron's arrow might not have found a killing spot. The Bible speaks of the arrow that flies by day, and Ron Lemming has to wonder if he and his son's prayer had not guided it.
When the biologist told me the path of the arrow, I thought of the prayer, and I thought, yes, God guided that arrow. The shot couldn't have been more perfect, I don't think. I just don't.
I think that the shot my dad took was definitely a miracle. I know that arrow was guided by God. There's no doubt in my mind. You could make that shot 1,000,000 more times and never hit that exact same spot.
When the warden is satisfied that killing the grizzly was an act of self-defense, he presents the lemmings with the grizzly's skull and claws to mark their brush with death. Ronnie soon bounces back from his injuries and heads right back into the wilderness. Today, Ron and Ronnie do not apply the masking elk scent that may have provoked the bear's attack, and they carry sidearms for protection.
What's happened to me hasn't slowed me down a bit. I was back up there hunting a month after in the same spot.
As far as hatred toward bears, I have none whatsoever. In fact, I love to see bears. I think they're one of the greatest looking animals that God ever created.
I think about the bears more. I'm constantly on lookout for them, but you know, I was before too. I knew they were there. I knew they were dangerous. I probably look over my shoulder quite a bit more than I used to, though. You know, used to I could go up there and take a nap on a hillside in the afternoon. I don't do that no more.
Father and son still ride their horses into the wilderness and bring their bows. And if anything, the ordeal they experienced has only drawn them closer.
My dad's definitely my hero for this. I don't think anybody else could have done it. To stand there as close as we were to him and make the shot that he made, there ain't nobody I know that could have done that.
Do I consider myself a hero? No, I do not. For one thing, he's my son. I love that kid more than life itself. I think he saved his own life too. The way he fought that bear when he was on his back, it was amazing. And I think a lot lesser men would have given up at that point, and they would have been dead.
Yeah, what happens made me just respect life a little more. You know, I always did anyways, but you know, you just don't know. You know, you don't think it's gonna happen to you when you go out there. You know, I've been out there 1,000,000 times and it's never happened, but it can at any time.
The lives of a father and son rested on courage and instinct while balancing on the blades of an arrowhead, flying, perhaps, by the power of prayer. The merciless wild. The heartless seas. When nature unleashes her cruelty, could you escape? Could you survive? These are the true stories of outdoorsmen confronted by death, armed with raw courage and a will to live. They are the ones who beat the odds and return from their own fight to survive. Father-son adventurers trek deep into the treacherous Alaska wilds.
Cliff areas looked pretty chancy.
Following the rugged trail of the white-coated doll sheep. Before the hunt is over, one man will witness his son windmilling helplessly through the air from a cliff.
I'm not sure he's going to keep breathing.
Your help's coming.
We have a serious situation.
And that man will learn the outer limits of strength, endurance, and commitment of which a father is capable. The spectacular wilds of Alaska's mountains. An ideal place for a hunter to pass from wilderness to wilderness, from one high place to another, in the words of John Muir. But those high places come with extreme risk. A misstep, a patch of ice, or a sliding rock can hurtle a hunter to the bottom of a gorge. Growing up a hunter in Texas, Rick Collins was willing 30 years ago to accept the risks of Alaska for its breathtaking wild spaces, twice as large as those of his native state.
Well, I moved to Alaska in 1983. Been several years, and I haven't grown tired of it a bit yet. And I came because of the outdoor life, mainly hunting, but fishing as well. I like the wilderness situations of being able to get away from the crowds.
It's gonna be a good trip this year, Jake.
Came here mostly for the adventure.
August 18th, 2006. Collins and his 22-year-old son, Jake, his main hunting partner, set off for their favorite Dall sheep hunting area, the sheer cliffs of the Wrangell Mountains. Getting to Dall sheep territory starts with a 6-hour drive across the state from their home in Wasilla. Then, a long slog on ATVs up muddy 4x4 tracks in the late summer thaw.
We started running into muddy conditions, difficulty finding our way through the bogs. We knew early on that we were going to be spending the night somewhere along the trail.
That ought to do, Jake. Got them covered up.
When they have to leave their ATVs, they conceal them to prevent bears from destroying them.
Yeah, the frame of mind at this point is things are going well. We were confident, and our confidence was growing that we were going to be able to find sheep.
A couple of hours after daylight, which here can come at 2 or 3 in the morning, the two are out of their spike camp and beginning to see sheep, and to find a place to set up their spotting scope to glass the far slopes and ridges.
Oh yeah, there's one.
We did convince ourselves that there were some legal rams in the group, although fairly high up the mountain.
The two spot sheep, but not the trophies they're hoping for. But young Jake is ready to settle for something that at least qualifies as a legal ram and wants to strike out after one. And Collins reasons that he might as well.
So I said, well, it's getting late enough in the day now that where those sheep were, I'm sure I can't make it up there and back by dark. So if you want to go get one of those sheep, I'll stay behind down here by the creek and just monitor you through the spotting scope as you go up.
Collins glasses son Jake with his spotting scope as the young man makes the steep climb to get in range of sheep. Collins is confident in his son's abilities, but wants to keep him in sight just in case.
And we can tell from the valley floor that the cliff areas along this bottom of this ridge, trying to get up out of the bowl, looked pretty substantial, pretty chancy. But of course, from that far away, no real clear indication of how steep they were. And then once he started the climb, I could tell from the way he was having to use both hands, make a few backtracks and try different routes going up, that it was a little more steep country than I had anticipated it was. So I could tell that was pretty tough stuff to get up through. And I was glad I wasn't having to get up through it.
As Collins watches, Jake seems to have spotted something out of Collins's line of sight, and it looks like he might be moving into position for a shot.
I saw him stop. I saw him look over that direction, and I couldn't see any animals over there, but then he started making his way over to that edge of the ridge. And then I saw him getting his gun ready, so I figured there were obviously some sheep over there that looked more attractive to him than the ones we'd seen before. And then eventually he took a shot. When he shot, I saw a sheep appear falling off further to the left across that gorge. And so I knew he had gotten a sheep. I saw him stand up and hold his arms over his head like, yeah, he got one.
Woo! I got it!
It's been a successful hunt for Jake. But the full celebration will have to wait until he finds a way down to the ram and then packs it out. Alaska's strict hunting regulations require that all edible meat must be retrieved from the field for human consumption.
Then he started walking up and down the edge of this cliffs area from this ridge looking for a way down.
Collins grows uneasy as he watches his son trying to find a safe way down the treacherous chutes of the gorge to the sheep.
Yeah, I started getting worried about it because I could see that there was no clear way down for him. I thought he might be considering doing something pretty drastic. And then I see him squat down and obviously take a posture like he's going to jump. So then I'm really getting worried. Then I see him turn around and face the mountain and grab the ledge. His hand slipped off the ledge and he falls over backwards and disappears out of my sight. The realization came rather sudden that we have a serious situation. I don't know how serious, but I have to get to him.
Jake Collins has fallen, and now his father must draw on a lifetime of outdoor experience and the sheer power of his will to save his son. Hunting on their own, deep in Alaska's Wrangell Mountains, Father Rick Collins has watched his son Jake hurtle off a cliff into a gorge. Now, Rick Collins must find a way to rein in his horror and concentrate on his son. Collins pulls himself together. With 3 hours to nightfall, he has to pack up rescue supplies and climb up to learn his son's fate.
I know it's going to take me a while to get to there. I haven't seen him. I have only my imagination to think about what condition he's in. Don't know if he's got broken legs, broken arms, if he's conscious, if he's not, if he's bleeding, if he's not. No way to know. Just grabbed what I could and started that direction.
Collins is beyond the range of any cell signal. He has no satellite phone or radio to call out on. A more serious hindrance is his age, as he has to drive his 53-year-old legs to carry him up the slopes at top speed.
About every 15 to 30 minutes, I'd have to stop for a rest, and every time I stopped, I'd just start yelling, Jake, I'm headed up there, just in case he was in a position where he could hear me.
The terrain grows only more steep and rugged, but the most difficult and ominous part is the silence. Collins receives no answers to his repeated shouts to his son.
My frame of mind is that if I'm getting close to him, he's probably not hearing me. And if he's not hearing me, it's probably because he's not conscious.
Collins presses on, legs and lungs burning. And then, without warning, he sights his son, lying motionless. Collins plunges into the gorge to reach Jake.
When I got to him, he obviously wasn't conscious. I was talking to him the last 5 feet or so as I approached him. I kind of grabbed his shoulder and said again, Jake, can you hear me? And his eyes opened and he kind of looked up at me, but I could tell there was just a blank stare, no recognition in his eyes. And he just closed his eyes and went back to complete unresponsiveness.
Rick does a quick exam and doesn't feel any broken bones, but Jake's head is full of cuts.
Jake, can you talk to me?
Collins considers trying to carry Jake out, but knows that's impossible in this terrain.
My next option is, am I going to go to camp to go down there and come back? I know it's going to take me 2 hours, very minimum, because it took me an hour to get to him. I don't think that's a good idea because I'm not sure he's going to keep breathing any length of time, much less for 2 hours. So I decide that, okay, I'm just going to stay with him with what I have.
And what he has is some parachute cloth to make an emergency shelter for his son and him.
So I had this with me that I knew I could cover us up with. I felt like he was off the rocks well enough that it was a good way for us to spend that first night and me to make sure he keeps breathing.
Collins beds down for the night beside Jake under the parachute cloth, sharing his body warmth and making sure his unconscious son continues breathing. Collins has to fight the gusting frigid wind all night, but in the late hours, things take an even more chilling turn.
Then sometime after midnight, he started having seizures where he would start to stiffen up, and he would even start to kick his legs up. They would only last about a minute and then go for anywhere from 15 minutes to a half hour before he would have another one, and that continued for a couple hours. I'd say by 3 to 4 in the morning, those had stopped.
Sleep is impossible for Collins as he monitors Jake's condition, and lying beside his son, he searches through the rescue options.
So I'm just thinking back and forth whether I'm going to leave him in the morning or whether I'm going to stay. To some point when I know I have to leave, he hadn't stopped breathing throughout the night. So that's further confirming to me that as soon as it gets daylight, I'm going to need to cover him up as best I can and go find help, because nobody's going to find us where we are.
Rick builds a rock wall to protect Jake from tumbling debris and covers his eyes to shield against scavenger birds. Collins has done all he can. Now he must abandon his son, even if only temporarily, if Jake's life is to be saved. Rick Collins is cheering the sight of his son Jake taking a doll sheep ram when the scene turns to one of horror as he sees his son falling helplessly into a deep gorge. Having stayed with an unconscious Jake through the chill Alaska night, as the injured boy suffers seizures, Collins makes the agonizing decision to leave his son in order to go for help.
Yeah, as you imagine, it's a major decision for me to actually turn my back on him and start to walk away. That was a very difficult thing to do. I knew that was the right thing to do. I was convinced that I had to leave him, but it took me, I think, 3 tries of actually turning around before I actually made myself keep walking away from him.
Rick Collins doesn't have time to look back at Jake. He's got to move as fast as his legs can carry him back to their spike camp, then on to the ATVs in the desperate hope of finding help for his son. An hour later, he reaches their spike camp. Then 2 more hours to the ATVs. But the thawed trail onward is a swamp of mud and muck, and Collins has to winch and muscle the 4x4 out of the bog holes when it gets stuck.
Got stuck 10 to 12 times probably going out where I had to get off the four-wheeler, then use either the winch or me coaxing the rig along, standing off to the side and using both the engine power and me pulling on it to get it out of the muck.
Finally, Collins reaches his truck. He has a choice of a short trip to an isolated ranger station or a longer ride to an area he remembers seeing rental cabins.
And I decided to take the chance and go with what I was relatively sure there's going to be some form of communication at a lodge. So I head that direction away from the ranger station, and within 3 or 4 miles I see a cabin up ahead, a recreational cabin on the left. So I pull into that cabin, go knock on the door, and somebody answers the door, and I ask if he knows of how I can get in touch with emergency services to ask for a rescue.
Collins' Good Samaritan drives him back to where they can get cell service, and they call an Alaska State Trooper dispatcher in Glen Allen, 100 miles away. The dispatcher puts through a swift chain of calls, and a rescue helicopter is in the air from the coolest National Guard Air Force Base in Anchorage. For more than 24 hours, Jake Collins has lain unconscious after hurtling off a cliff. Now, his father boards the rescue chopper, wondering if they will find his son again before it's too late. For more than 30 grueling hours, Rick Collins has traveled muddy trails in search of help for his unconscious son. Now the rescue has gone tactical as they chopper back in high winds to try to locate the gorge in which the fallen Jake Collins lies.
They gave me a handheld laser light and asked me to point towards the gorge I recognized as the one Jake was in.
The terrain around Jake is too tough for a cable rescue. So Rick Collins and the two-man rescue team must bail out of the helicopter and reach Jake on foot.
So they decided then that the two parajumpers and myself were going to have to get out of the helicopter and hike back to where he was, and then carry him out to a location where he could be retrieved by the cable hoist.
Collins worries that a critical hour has now been added to the rescue effort for his son. Collins presses uphill as fast as he can. But fortunately, one of the parajumpers with him, Red Reddington, takes off at top speed and outraces Collins up the slope.
I think I hear him. He's just over the top.
That was Red, took off in the lead and made his way up, and he was the first one to reach Jake and heard him breathing against the tarp actually before he got to where you could see him.
Jake! Jake, can you hear me? Jake!
So I probably got up to him 15 minutes or so after he got to him, and he was still in the process of getting the tarp ripped away and evaluating his condition when we got there. But, well, I know he's still alive then, so that was a real relief to hear that he was alive. And as I got up there, I just sat down by Jake as they worked on him and told him I was glad he hung on.
Collins' words are for an unconscious Jake. The young man feels cold to the touch, his breathing labored, and his pulse feeble. Yet he is alive. The three men place him on a canvas litter and begin the rush down the slope, back to where the chopper can reach them.
Anchorage life flight, 44K32. We're ready for cable. Please lower.
It's full throttle to Providence Medical Center in Anchorage. Jake is barely alive, and he's fallen into a coma. It doesn't look good. But then, 20 days after Jake Collins' fall, a miracle. He wakes up, opens his eyes, and speaks two words: hello and mom.
I didn't know I was in the hospital. I didn't know where I was. And I guess I don't know if it was normal or expected, but my senses seem to not be capable of being alert all at the same time. I have a few spotty memories. I can't see anything, but I can hear people talking to me. So I don't know if my eyes were closed. Maybe my vision sense just wasn't working yet. I don't know. I had a traumatic brain injury from the accident, and the part of my brain that was most affected was not what I refer to as the academic side of my brain. It was the motor part of my brain. I couldn't stand. I couldn't communicate very well. It was like being a baby all over again. I was completely helpless. I had to relearn all the functions of being a self-sustaining individual.
Doctors tell Jake a full recovery will take more than 10 years. But it's now just 6 years later. He's married with a family and is a teacher in his home of Wasilla, Alaska. He remembers little about the incident. Jake continues to hunt, and he and his dad have returned to the scene of the accident.
The excuse for me to want to go back was to find my rifle, but I really wanted to go back just because I felt like I had not completed that hunting trip. That was a lot of emotional healing for me and my father. Being back in the same spot, for me, being able to recapture exactly where it was, because my memories of that location weren't great.
I got pretty emotional about going back to the spot. It brought back unpleasant memories for sure for me to be there, but at the same time, I think it was good for Jake to see the spot, kind of to bring a closure to it, to say this is something that happened, the event's passed, and I'm moving on with my life, things are getting better.
Jake Collins well knows he owes his life to his father.
I think my reaction to my dad is gratitude. I think I'm grateful to my dad that I'm here, and grateful to my family that for all the support that they gave me for me to have the quality of life that I do now.
The merciless wild. The heartless seas. When nature unleashes her cruelty, could you escape? Could you survive? These are the true stories of outdoorsmen confronted by death, armed with raw courage and a will to live. They are the ones who beat the odds and return from their own fight to survive. A hormone-fueled buck attacks a fisherman.
I was dead.
His nephew jumps in with both feet.
I had to get involved or he was gonna die.
170 pounds of raw power.
And it was lifting me and Ron off the ground as we were holding it with, everything we had.
Armed with only their wits.
You gotta use your fear to your advantage.
And a fish fillet knife.
Ron's face was right there. This was no Bambi. I had so much adrenaline. The deer did, Ron did. It was, it was all crazy.
A cold Halloween morning in central Texas. Ron Smith, former Marine, and his nephew, Eric Alvarez, are heading to the river to fish. They are just hours away from their favorite pastime, turning into a tale of terror.
I'm a full-fledged hunter, fisherman, camper, biker. Now, I don't get into skydiving and stuff like that. I'm not a full-blown idiot. I really do enjoy fishing and hunting. I fish in any kind of body of water I can find. Whatever's closed, whatever my gas pocket money would allow me to go to. Like, I've done a lot of ocean fishing. My biggest fish I ever caught was a 100-pound 7-gill shark out of San Francisco. I've caught catfish as long as my arm. Don't weigh catfish, who cares? We just eat them. My Uncle Ron's always been an outdoorsman. He's always been a guy that's really good with kids, really good with taking the next generation out. He's always been somebody to look up to. Mostly catfish is what we went after, but if crappie was running, we'd go after them. And on this particular day, that's mainly what we was after, was crappie.
They make the short drive to a popular fishing area, a river that feeds into nearby Eagle Mountain Lake.
We don't take a house with us when we go fishing. We leave the chairs at home, we leave the campers at home. When we go in the outdoors, we want to be in the outdoors.
It's a short walk to the river and the start of fishing.
I'm a lazy fisherman. I like to sit on the riverbank and enjoy my surroundings. So I use live minnows under a bobber. I cast it out with a light pole because they're little fish, so you want some enjoyment. You want to fight. You use a big pole, there's no fight. You use a little pole, you got a good fight on your hands.
Yep. From the 5-foot bank they're fishing on, it's 30 feet across the river. What Ron and Eric don't know is they're standing on what could be a fatal path.
had our lunch with us, and being a fishing trip, we had our beer with us. We got our lines in the water, and I just now opened my first beer, took a swig of it, and set it down. Looked across the river, and there's a real nice 9-point whitetail buck deer.
I noticed there was a buck over there, and he was raking his antlers against a tree. And me and Ron were checking him out for a few minutes and thought it was a pretty cool thing.
The buck's tree rubbing is classic rutting behavior, and the rut is when deer are most unpredictable.
He walked up to the edge of the water, looking at us. Then he swam across the river, which we thought was pretty cool, watching a deer swimming right up to us. He was swimming across to us with something in his mind. And if we would have known what was in his mind, we would have acted different.
And it came about probably 30 feet down the bank from us, and walked up real slow out of the river, and it walked over up to us. And I actually stuck my hand out and pet the deer a little bit on the head. It seemed totally tame. We thought it was, something that had been around people a lot, and it just wasn't afraid. We didn't feel any fear from it or anything like that. And Ron petted a little bit on the back, and then and it went off into it kind of walked away and went into these trees that were nearby.
Ron and Eric aren't alone in their appreciation of the white-tailed deer. Perhaps more than any animal, the whitetail is the symbol of America's open spaces. Hunted to numbers of less than 1 million a century ago, the whitetail has made a stunning comeback. Now over 30 million roam our mountains, forests, and grasslands. 6 million are taken by hunters each year, yielding nearly 250 million pounds of meat.
I've been around deer a lot in my life, before and after that. Having one come up close to me? No. A deer sees a human, he usually takes off. That's why when this deer came up to us, and then being a park-like setting, we thought it was a pet. No, when a wild deer sees a human, he runs, he gets away.
But this is mating season, and the seemingly docile buck is in fact a 170-pound, hormone-crazed 9-pointer in rut, capable of 35-mile-per-hour bursts of speed and 8-foot vertical leaps.
The buck was in rut, and I think he was coming over to assert his dominance. Most people think of deer and you think Bambi. Well, deer can actually be very, very dangerous. They kill people every year.
Suddenly, the deer breaks for the pair of fishermen.
When I looked up and seen that buck coming out of the tree line, I thought I was dead. I didn't think I stood a chance to do anything.
The buck the two men were just petting is now charging at them out of the trees, singling out Ron Smith, driving him over the bank and pinning him to the ground.
But once he attacked me and we was engaged, there was no fear. That's gone out of you at that moment. Anybody been in any tight situations, know you got to use your fear to your advantage. Get your adrenaline going. Now you got to beat whatever's attacking you. I had to beat a deer.
When I seen the deer take my uncle down to the ground, I knew that I had to get involved or he was going to die right in front of me.
Eric finds the only weapon available and places it in his uncle's hands. It is now an elemental battle out of the Stone Age, and the deer is about to unleash its full fury. Former Marine Ron Smith's fishing trip has turned into hand-to-hand combat with a buck crazed by the rut.
When a buck is in rut, he changes completely. His hormones change, his thought process changes, and his body changes. During the rut, the bucks get extremely aggressive. Their neck swells up so that they can absorb the impact of hitting each other in the head time after time, kind of like a football player. They are extremely aggressive towards each other. They kill each other all the time. A lot of times they'll fight to the death.
Ron's nephew, Eric Alvarez, desperately looks for a way to intervene.
I picked up a stick. It was probably about like 4 inches in diameter, an old dry log, and I started to hand it to Ron, and he grabbed it out of my hand, and he hit the deer right over the head with it, like without even thinking. I mean, it broke it right over the deer's head, which completely infuriated the deer. Uncle Ron weighed about 160 pounds, and it literally was throwing him around like a rag doll.
And his antlers went on both sides of me. I went in between his antlers. I wrapped his antlers up under my arms, and with his momentum hitting me, that drug us both into the river. I figured that was the end of it. When you get a wild animal, or any animal, your tame dog, if he's in a fight, you get him wet. Most animals quit once they get wet.
And when Ron brought him into the river, you know, I was thinking that was probably going to be the end of it. I mean, because he pulled him all the way out into the middle of the river.
So I'm climbing up on the bank. Next thing I feel is antlers hitting me in the butt side, knocking me up on the ground. I'm laying on my belly, and I rolled over, and he's still charging me.
And the deer chased him right out of the river and hit Ron and with his horns and knocked him to the ground. He had the antlers right in Ron's chest, goring him on the ground.
He got me good that time with his antlers in my chest and stomach.
The antlers of a white-tailed buck are a wonder of nature. They emerge as living tissue in early spring and grow up to half an inch a day. By autumn, they are fully formed and become dead bone and lethal fighting weapons. White-tailed bucks use their antlers to duel during the rutting or mating season. To the victors belong the does. Whitetails shed their antlers completely in winter. The size of the beams and the number of points are a function of nutrition as well as age and genetics.
I was like, I got to get in there, you know, and I jumped all the way down with both feet with, you know, everything I had, and I hit the deer right in its back, along its back, and I knocked the deer off at Ron. I didn't think about what was going to happen to me, but I knew before I did it that it was going to be basically like kill or be killed. It didn't stop the deer. You know, it gave Ron a little bit of time to get up, and I grabbed one side of the antlers, and then Ron got up and grabbed the other side.
How strong he was? One man, I don't care who you are, how big you are, could not beat a deer hand to hand. The deer will win every time. If I didn't have Eric there to back me, to cover my backside, I wouldn't be here telling you this story.
We held on tight and pulled its head to the ground, but its knees, front legs would not buckle. It stood on all fours, but only its head, and it was that strong. And it was lifting me and Ron off the ground as we were holding it with, you know, everything we had.
During the rut, a white-tailed buck's neck will double or even triple in size, with muscles fed by rushes of natural steroids, testosterone, melatonin, and other biochemicals. The hormonal soup is triggered by changing daylight in autumn.
I realized at that point that we didn't have nowhere to go, and we were stuck. And Ron was totally wore out already, and I couldn't believe Ron had that much in him, because I hadn't fought the deer but half as long, and I was totally tired.
For men and deer, it's now a fight to the death. Texas anglers Ron Smith and nephew Eric Alvarez have had their morning's fishing trip turned into a primeval struggle between men and beast.
It's very rare for deer to attack people, but during the rut, it happens every year. You hear of somebody getting attacked, people getting hurt, killed, severely injured, cars having the windows broken out of them. You hear horror stories all the time.
And I told Eric, I said, now watch out for his feet. So Eric maneuvered around to get out of the way of his feet, because I don't know if people know it or not, but a deer's hoof is more dangerous than their antler. They're sharper and they're stronger. Eric and I couldn't really figure out what to do with this deer. I couldn't let go. If I let go, he would just keep attacking us.
I dreaded having to do anything to the deer. Right as I was thinking that, Ron said, "Eric, get the fillet knife off my hip and cut his throat."
I told Eric finally, I said, it's time to kill this deer. We ain't got a choice. And I had a fish and fillet knife on my side. But a fish and fillet knife is real thin, real sharp, but it's little. You know, it's only like 8 or 10 inches long. It's not something you kill with, it's something you clean with.
And I looked down and I could see the fillet knife right there, and I grabbed it, immediately knowing what I was gonna do. But I was full of so much adrenaline that I had to steady myself because I was about to cut anything. A fillet knife so sharp, and Ron's face was right there by the neck where I had to cut with his hands on the horns. Everything was happening so fast, and I had so much adrenaline. The deer did, Ron did. It was, you know, it was all crazy. And I got the knife, and I slowed down and I positioned it.
Eric only had about a 4 to 6 inch spot without getting me. And this whole time, the deer's jumping around. I'm moving around. But Eric makes a perfect stab and gets the deer through the throat and the jugular vein.
And we just held on it, you know, it bled out. Even after all that, after it was done bleeding, it was still standing there, and it was breathing, and you could hear all the noises and the heat from it, everything.
Even mortally wounded, the buck refuses to surrender.
And then it stood back up again, and then it fell down, and it was dead.
And I go to get up, and I can't. At that moment, I realized the deer's antler was through my hand and had me pinned to the ground. And during this whole process, I never knew I was injured. I was beat up in the chest and stomach, but I didn't know that antler was through my hand. So I had to pull my hand off his antler before I could get up.
Ron got into the river, and Brett washed his hand off, and when he pulled it out, he'd had an antler went all the way through his thumb into his palm, and then he was having a hard time with anything at that point. I knew I needed to get him to the hospital.
Eric helps his uncle back to the truck. They are headed to the emergency room, with Ron fearing infection. There, they'll learn the man-made cause of the buck's behavior. Having lived through violent combat with a rut-crazed 9-point buck, Eric Alvarez rushes his wounded and exhausted uncle, Ron Smith, to the nearest hospital.
Really, I was thinking the deer was rabid. That was my first thought.
And they were having him wait in line, and we said, look, he's just been attacked by a deer. Ron needs to get to, in the emergency room.
Okay. Sir, why don't you come with me? We'll take you right away. You can wait here. We'll be out and get you in a minute. Let you know how he's doing.
And they made me wait out in the lobby.
The emergency room personnel treat Ron's hand and check him for other punctures and possible broken bones.
That looks pretty nasty. How'd you do that?
I got tangled up with a deer, and the antler went right through my hand.
In the lobby, Eric has a visitor, someone he expected, the game warden.
And I thought, well, I guess I'm going to jail, for poaching a deer, because I knew that it wasn't deer season, and he sat down and he said, tell me what happened. And I told him the same story I'm telling now. And he said, I'm just gonna say you got lucky, you didn't get hurt a lot worse. I'm saying it's self-defense, and I'm glad you're okay. That's what he told me.
The game warden tells Eric more, though. He's already examined the carcass and determined from its swollen neck and glands that it was indeed rutting. But its extreme aggression is more a product of human ignorance.
We had a report of a man in the area. He was feeding a deer, and by all descriptions, this is the exact same deer.
The game warden told me that there was a man that had been feeding that deer corn, so the deer had actually gotten used to him and started to lose its fear of people, and that's exactly why that happened, I think. I think the deer attacked us because it was in rut, it was territorial, but I don't think it would have attacked us unless there was a man or somebody that was feeding it and got it used to people.
An habituated wild animal that no longer fears people becomes not only a threat to human life, but to its own. Eventually, a deer or any other animal not afraid of humans will try to dominate them, which can lead to serious injury for people. And once an animal has hurt someone, its own fate is sealed, because then it will have to be found and put down. So hand-feeding a deer is simply cruelty masquerading as kindness.
Don't let that deer come up to you. Do whatever you got to keep him away from you. Protect yourself. I don't care if it's a deer, any animal in the wild comes up to you, worry about him. A little squirrel comes walking up to you, worry about him, because he's probably got rabies. There's no reason for a wild animal to walk up to a human being.
The deer's head went to a lab to be checked for rabies. It wasn't infected. But a question remained. What should be done with the meat?
But there was a homeless family living on the river, and the game warden asked me if it was okay for me to let that homeless family have the deer, because by law, I couldn't take it. Eric and I could not have that deer because we was the ones who killed it. I told him okay.
And we thought that was an awesome thing to do. I certainly didn't want nothing to do with that deer, or eating it or anything.
Ron Smith will never forget his day of hand-to-hand combat with a white-tailed buck. And perhaps he took away from the experience more than he lost.
The incident with the deer made me more interested in going outdoors. When you go outdoors, there are so many things that can happen, and they're all new. And most of the time, not all the time, they're all good. People who live in the city, stay in their houses, do not know the enjoyment of being outdoors. I do know the enjoyment of being outdoors, even if bad things happen every once in a while. There ain't nothing in this world except for my health stops me from hunting and fishing. I will hunt and fish until the day I die.
Ron Smith continued his life as an avid outdoorsman. In the summer of 2013, shortly after sharing this story, Ron passed away. His incredible tale of his encounter with a deer is just one example of the adventurous spirit that guided his entire life. Deep inside a remote Utah canyon, disaster strikes. A hiker slips and falls 2 stories down a sheer rock face.
It felt like a bomb had just gone off.
His legs smashed.
You're gonna have to sit tight.
Leaving him in agonizing pain.
I just refused to die.
His only hope is his brother.
It was scary walking away from Justin. I gotta save my brother.
As the injured brother waits alone hour after hour.
I started to wonder if he had died that night.
His younger brother faces agonies of his own.
I fell asleep, and I woke up and I was on fire.
When one life depends on another, 2 brothers face the toughest challenges of their lives. In the wild, when things go bad, they go bad fast. Without warning, your life can hang by a thread. Adventurer and survivor Craig DiMartino fought back from his own wilderness disaster to reclaim his life. Now Craig meets other courageous outdoorsmen who beat the odds and return from their own fight to survive.
Hi, I'm Craig DiMartino. Canyoneering in the rugged terrain of southern Utah was an adventure Justin and Jeremy Harris had wanted to do for a while. The narrow canyons would be a challenge for them, but they were both up for a day of serious hiking. When Justin dropped 20 feet off a boulder to the canyon floor, shattering his leg, their adventure turned into a survival nightmare.
Utah's San Rafael Swell. 2,000 square miles of spectacular panoramas. It's a remote, surreal, almost alien landscape. For eons, the relentless runoff has cut through this soft Coconino and Cedar Mesa sandstone and created a maze of deep slot canyons. The twisting canyons drop hundreds of feet below the surface of the mesa and meander for miles. Some are so narrow that a canyoneer, as these hikers are called, has to turn sideways to slip between the steep walls. It was the captivating serenity and the challenge of exploring the mysterious canyons that drew hikers Justin Harris and his younger brother, Jeremy.
I always look forward to camping trips, hiking around, and just exploring the mountains and the beauty of the area that we have here.
Hey. Hey, Justin, it's Jeremy. How you doing?
Hey, still up for camping this weekend?
Yeah. Okay, cool.
So I think we'll go to Baptist Draw.
Justin and I did a lot of climbing and canyoneering.
It's about 7-8 mile stretch. And I'm gonna bring the rappel gear because we'll have to go down some pour-offs.
Oh, that'd be great. We've never been there.
We have to go this weekend before winter settles in.
Canyoneering in the desert has been somewhere to escape to and a place to connect.
In 2003, the two Utah natives were living on opposite ends of the state. For months, they had been talking about getting together for a weekend of hiking and climbing. Unfortunately, work schedules and family obligations confounded their efforts to reconnect, but the brothers kept trying.
We just couldn't put the weekend together until late November, and it was later than we wanted to go, but we knew if we didn't go that weekend, it wasn't going to happen.
On a November Friday, the pair reunited in the south central part of Utah, at the edge of the San Rafael Swell.
This is absolutely beautiful, Jeremy. It's nice. How much farther do you think before we get there?
They drove 2 more hours through Goblin Valley and into the heart of canyon country to Baptist Draw and the mouth of Chute Canyon.
It's just a beautifully clean, pristine area. There's no telephones, there's no gas stations, there's no hospitals. It's miles to anything.
It's cold, man. Let's get that one by your foot.
Their plan was to camp at their truck Friday night, then Saturday morning, climb down into the canyon.
What time you want to go tomorrow?
I guess it depends if you want to stay an extra night.
Yeah, you got time?
They'd hike 8 or 9 miles straight out of the canyon, then circle back and return to the truck by Saturday night.
I was looking forward to it, exploring a new canyon and just having fun with my brother.
It was extra cold for November. The temperature was near freezing.
Holy cow. All right, here's my jacket.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you. Go down and around there.
Their trek started with an 80-foot rappel down into the canyon.
Whoa, you all right, buddy? Yep, I'm good. Good, got it.
Since they had rappelled down into the canyon, the only way out was to move forward. Jeremy's trail notes showed a narrow chute that led out of the canyon a few miles ahead.
The canyon was very narrow. If you can imagine standing next to a skyscraper and just putting your back to the building and looking up.
Look at this.
That's kind of what it was like, but you'd have another building in front of you too, right there.
All right, let's keep moving. Right
At points along the path, the brothers ran into sudden drops called pour-offs. Some dropped off dramatically, 20 to 30 feet at a time. There were also large boulders that jutted out,
pretty tight,
called chokestones, that blocked their way, slowing their progress.
How's it look?
It's not easy hiking at all. It's very difficult and tough to scramble through those areas.
How far along are we?
We're only gone about a quarter of the way.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Well, let's get moving. We gotta get here before dark.
The temperature was dropping fast, and they knew they needed to be out by nightfall. They began to rush as Jeremy leaped down a drop-off.
Damn it!
He got soaked in an icy pool. Craig met up with Justin and Jeremy in Utah's canyon country and heard their story firsthand.
Jeremy hits the water. And he's now wet, and you guys are way in the backcountry.
Absolutely.
What were you thinking at that point?
We're already way behind.
Yeah.
It's way below freezing.
We gotta pick up the pace. We gotta get you back to camp. I'll get you warmed up.
Hiking out of the canyon and back to the truck as quickly as possible was now the top priority.
So Justin and I had picked up the pace. We came to another drop. This one was probably 25 feet.
What do you think? Should we drop a line?
No, we don't got time. We got a down climb. Come on.
So I took the lead and climbed up over the top. And as I put my back towards the rock and started looking for handholds and places to put my feet and move down this rock, I lost my footing.
Jeremy grabbed Justin's hand, but felt him slip away. The crack of a breaking bone could be heard throughout the canyon.
It felt like a bomb had just gone off in my head.
I've never heard anyone scream in agony like that in my life.
Jeremy knew Justin was seriously hurt, but until he could get to him, he had no idea his brother's injury was life-threatening. Justin Harris and his younger brother Jeremy had finally gotten away for a weekend of canyoneering in south central Utah.
We got a down climb. Come on.
As Justin worked his way over a boulder, he lost his footing.
As Justin loses his footing and goes, he hits the ground, breaks his leg. You know he's broken it.
Oh yeah, he's screaming in agony. I've never heard anyone wail like that.
His left leg had been smashed by the impact against the rock. Justin's screams echoed through the canyon. The brothers' desperate situation was one that Craig recognized all too well. Back in 2002, Craig, a very skilled climber, was working his way up a steep rock wall with a buddy in Colorado. A miscommunication sent Craig crashing nearly 100 feet to the ground. The impact destroyed bones in his feet and eventually cost Craig his right leg.
He was yelling like you've never heard someone yell.
And he's just screaming and screaming and screaming, and so I started yelling at him.
What were you yelling?
Stop screaming, and finally he stopped. So I just asked him, do you really believe in God? And he said, yeah, I do. I said, will you say a prayer then? And he said a prayer.
Please protect my brother and myself.
For some reason, everything kind of calmed down.
Right.
And then I climbed down.
Talk to me, brother.
It's broken. I felt it snap.
Okay, I'm gonna look, okay?
Yeah.
And we kind of assessed the situation.
Jeremy pulled up Justin's pant leg.
How's it look?
It's pretty swollen, man.
His left shin bone had multiple breaks and was rapidly swelling up.
You're gonna have to sit tight.
What neither brother knew was that the swelling was a sign of internal bleeding, which was life-threatening.
Was that just almost debilitatingly terrifying for you?
It took me about a minute to actually grasp what had just happened.
Right.
And how serious our situation just got.
Yeah.
Think about how tough it was to just get to that point in the canyon. I may have just, ended it for both of us.
Can you carry me out?
There's no way I can carry you out of here.
What are we gonna do?
There was only one other option.
Still light out. I'll climb through, I'll get help, and I'll bring help back.
There's no way you can get out by dark.
Have to, okay?
We made the decision that I was going to leave him and go get help.
Give me your pack.
So we went through all of our provisions.
They divvied up their food, leaving most of what little they had with Justin.
No!
You're gonna get cold, you're not moving. I'll be moving, okay? I'll be all right. I'll give you my best.
I don't need
You gotta stay warm. You're sitting still, I'm moving.
All right.
I'll be moving.
Since Justin was wet and immobile, staying warm was critical in now below freezing temperatures.
Yeah.
Hypothermia and frostbite were very real threats.
You get cold, this is here, okay?
Okay.
In my mind, we may never see each other again.
That was a real possibility.
Yeah.
They found their camera at the bottom of the pack.
I'm gonna take a picture.
You guys took time to take a picture of each other. What were you thinking? Like, why would you do that?
in case either one of us didn't make it out or both of us didn't make it out, that here was our last moments, our last day. There'd be a record, there'd be something left behind. We just knew we had to.
Can we go okay?
I love you.
I love you.
We told each other that we loved each other, that we'd be strong and we'd be able to get out of this. I just told him, think happy thoughts, you'll be fine. But I remember him taking a few steps and going farther down the canyon from me, and then he went around this turn in the canyon, and he was gone.
Now Justin was alone in the frigid, dark canyon. He had no idea if he would survive his injury, or even if his little brother would survive the difficult solo trek for help. The brothers' happy reunion had become a horrible nightmare. A canyoneer's worst nightmare, slipping off a high ledge
Justin!
and shattering a leg. Justin Harris and his brother Jeremy were always close, but now Justin's life was in his brother's hands. Justin can't walk, so it's up to Jeremy to go it alone through 4 miles of a winding canyon in increasing darkness to get help.
Now you're alone in the canyon.
It was absolutely terrifying. We're out there in the middle of nowhere, miles and miles from anyone. Your kid brothers tags along with you and follows you, and now he left me there, and he had to go on and go for help. It was life or death now. You don't want to think that I've got a 5% chance of living now, or that it would be a miracle if I made it out of there.
Right.
You want to think that you're still in control, that this is what we're going to do, this is the plan, everything's going to work out, and you try to focus on that, but in the back of your mind, I was thinking I might die right here.
The plan was simple enough. Jeremy would hike out, return to their pickup, and call for help using the cell phone they had left in the truck.
We calculated that it would probably take him, another 4 to 8 hours to get out of the canyon, depending on how much more water, how many more obstacles there were, and then maybe another 4 or 6 hours for help to be contacted and come back and start trying to get to me.
Keeping warm was imperative, but next to impossible in the freezing temperatures. And then there was the internal bleeding Justin couldn't do anything about, causing his muscle compartments to swell, which were beginning to restrict blood flow to other parts of his body.
And if I could make it through the night, then I would have a really good chance of living and getting out of that canyon. And so that was my goal, that was my plan.
Jeremy hiked and climbed his way through the maze of boulders, chokestones, and pour-offs.
The canyon had been pretty dry so far. But right as I walked around the corner, it was pool after pool after pool after pool after pool. And so I'm swimming. It got between 10 and 15 below that night. So I was severely hypothermic and hallucinating as well. I was screaming at God, hoping someone would come and help me.
Justin, meanwhile, tried to stay warm. He flapped his arms, made windmills, whatever movements weren't too painful to keep his blood flowing. Hour after hour, he watched his leg blow up like a misshapen balloon.
So I pulled up my pant leg and I looked at my leg to see what was going on there. And I noticed that there were these big blisters all over my leg, and they were popping, and there was sort of a yellowish fluid that was coming out of those blisters and running down my leg, and I knew it wasn't a good sign.
Exhausted from hiking and fighting off the cold, Jeremy made steady progress on his way out of the canyon. Until he realized he was in real trouble.
I had a pocket that my trail notes were in, and the pool that I went through, the trail notes washed out, so I was kind of like winging it. So I continued down the canyon. I went down 5 different pour-offs and got to one pour-off that was about, I don't know, probably 60 feet down. I realized I'm in the wrong place and I need to go back up canyon.
He didn't remember a drop that high on his trail notes. Jeremy had gone too far. He must have walked past the turn that would have led out of the canyon. But where? How long ago did he pass the turn? Jeremy had no choice but to backtrack to find the path. His mistake would waste valuable time and exhaust what little energy he had left to save his brother. While down climbing a high ledge, Justin Harris slipped and shattered his leg. So his brother Jeremy went for help. On the verge of hypothermia, after hours of hiking, Jeremy had lost his way in the dark as he searched for the exit out of the deep Utah Canyon. At stake was his brother's life. Now he had to backtrack up the canyon, costing him precious hours, in order to hopefully recognize the right turn.
So 5 different pour-offs I had to climb back up. One took me many attempts. Gave up. Try again. It took me like several hours to get back up.
As Jeremy retraced his steps in search of the path that he had missed, Justin's condition became grave.
The middle of the night, it was so cold that I felt like my skin was freezing, and I started thinking about, frostbite, and I need to do something else to warm my body up. So I would try to do some arm circles. I would try to move my good leg, eat a little bit, anything that I could do to warm myself up.
The freezing temperatures and soaking wet clothes were getting to be too much for Jeremy.
All that was in my mind was to save my brother. I gotta save my brother. And so it was really hard to take a break, but I had to warm up. It was so cold that I had to lay right in to the fire, and I fell asleep, and I woke up and I was on fire.
He beat out the fire, dried his boots, and resumed the frustrating search for a way out of the canyon.
I had no water at all. I put snow into my water bottle and kept it under my armpit to try and melt it. But that didn't work at all. It was just one thing after another.
Justin made it through the long, cold night. Sunday morning brought warmer temperatures and a bit of relief. But as the hours went by, hope for a prompt rescue faded.
It's a challenge to stay positive. It's a challenge to stay motivated to get through another 5 minutes or another hour. You start to doubt, and I worried about a lot of things. I worried about Jeremy and his physical limitations and if he was going to be able to get through it. And as the day went on and the light finally made it down into the canyon again about the middle of the day, and then passed over the canyon into the afternoon, and it started getting colder again, that's when I started to think about Jeremy, and I started to wonder if maybe he had had an accident or if he had died that night in the canyon.
There was only one way out and one chance at survival for both of them. Jeremy had to get out of that canyon. What he didn't count on was taking a wrong turn. Find out how the brothers' faith in each other would keep them alive on the next Fight to Survive.